So I'm grateful. I'm grateful. Yeah.
Welcome to podcast number 8 with Pavan and Betty G. And today we are talking about completion as well as we are the ones we've been waiting for, and tying alchemy into this a little bit as well. And so this discussion is really a springboard from the last, I'm going to say probably even about 3 or more podcasts. It seems like the discussion keeps evolving and one continues to tie into another. So there's a big aspect of the divine feminine to this as well. Um, Betty, do you want to say something to start out or?
I just have been catching glimpses of little things all week leading up to this, with everything else that's going on, you have to kind of catch the good stuff. And one of them, like to start your day, is place intention and then pay attention. And I really like that one.
Yes.
And so every day when you start, before you think of what you have to do, set an intention to do one thing that's just for you, something that you put off or something that you haven't gotten to or whatever. Um, and then pay attention and watch for the synchronicity, watch for things to start to appear on your path. And another way to start your day, or another way to connect to a higher place, is to align your heart and your brain with the a short kind of a meditation where you put your hand on your heart and you do deep breathing. You close your eyes and um, you think about well-being, appreciation, caring, gratitude, all of the positive things, and you'll start to feel kind of a relaxation. And when the heart is aligned with the head, then you go through your day like that. So instead of analyzing everything and being in the left brain, which is, organize, put things in place, you can kind of live more in the creative space. And the female, or the feminine divine, is creator, nurturer, uh, comforter, the things that we want to think about and how to treat other people. So it's a good way to just start your day. And you may have a favorite meditation, but I suggest that everybody start doing that daily. Even if you, before your family wakes up in the early morning hours, if you're awake, just do it quickly and then go back to sleep. You'll stay in that vibration. So, or listen to drumming, listen to something that calms you, like a rhythm, or play the drum. I mean, you and I could do that. We have drums. So,
Right.
but just something that gets you um, balanced. I want to say aligned. And they call it heart math. If you want to look it up, there's an institute, and I think it's in New York, and it's the Heart Math Institute. You can look up how it came into existence and find out more details about it. But and also Greg Braden emphasizes this, and especially right now, we need to start living a heart-centered existence.
Yeah, I think that is really the key piece. And we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, actually, but certainly that's what I'm working on personally. And then I'm seeing it with many clients too, where we're in this period of transition where we are gradually becoming more heart-centered, right? We're moving into this dimension. We've talked about the earth moving into that dimension as well. And it's not like today you're not there, tomorrow you're there. It's this gradual process. So I think that some of the tools and the meditation that you're mentioning, those sorts of things are really key, and particularly starting the day, as you mentioned with it, it's balancing, but it's also bringing you into the heart space, which is bringing you, connecting you with the divine feminine. And then you're in this creative energy, and there's a lot of potential there, and it feels very needed. It feels essential for the time that we're in right now. And I wasn't necessarily going to share this in this way, but I think it's coming up where it could be useful. So as far as the completion and the alchemy and this, we are the ones we have been waiting for, I can say personally, I think it was about a week or maybe 2 weeks ago now, I had a healing session that was very powerful. And I had like some physical things that were cropping up. So like some migraines and some tension. So I thought that that was the layer, because that's kind of been maybe a bit of an Achilles heel for me in the past to be addressed. But in fact, I did some things to address that, acupuncture and massage, and it just did not help in the slightest. So that made me, oftentimes I'll ask my guides or I'll start with the energetic piece if I do have something going on personally. But this time, again, I just assumed the physical was sort of the first place to go. So when I checked in, this was like, no, this is a really energetic issue, an entity, if you will. And I put this in my newsletter, so some of you may have read a little bit about this, but not in a scary way, but in a sense of energy that I created over the course of my life from the period of being even a very young child. But then it starts to have a bit of a momentum and some aspects to it that are kind of inhibiting and separate from self. So essentially, it was just time to transmute, and this is where the alchemy comes in, this energy. And so in a session I was able to do that. And I'll also share, at a different point this may have looked or been more dramatic. So maybe I'd have more like detoxing or crying or emotional upset or whatever that looks like. But I'm also in a different place. We're always evolving and expanding. So it was very, in comparison, direct, clean, quick, sort of like accelerated. You can ask your guide, I asked my guides and I got this information, and the actual transmuting, the alchemy, was pretty quick. And so it wasn't, the interesting piece that ties into this is it wasn't just about completion for something, some kind of pattern, let's say from my childhood to adulthood or something more personal. That was a piece of it. And I won't even get into what that's related to because that's kind of not that significant. But what's interesting is what were also aspects of it were um, ancestral trauma and the trauma of the divine feminine. And so these pieces are tied to, right, my experience also as a woman right now living. And if you connect with past lives, like past lives I've had, but also just the imprints that are on the earth based on the history of women since really the beginning of time. And we're talking about the divine feminine, so it's not exclusively the experience of women, but I'm just saying I happen to be one in this life. So there's a relevance there. And so that was an important awareness because as I was transmuting it, I realized it's not just the personal piece. I have a choice to continue to step around the kind of like tiptoe around cultural norms or belief systems, or sometimes, right, we might err on the side of saying something that's not completely true because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings or, this sort of thing. And of course, we don't have to have the intention of hurting someone's feelings, but we can come from a place of truth that's neutral without judgment, that basically, it's a plus for us because it's a bid for our own well-being to be in that truthful place. So what I recognize is my individual healing, right, doesn't magically transmute this whole ancestral trauma, this whole feminine lineage trauma and of the divine feminine. But for me individually, there was a transmuting, and there's an opportunity to transmute that personally going forward in this life, if this makes sense. And then the more of us who do that in our lives, and we can get a little more specific about this, but there's this tipping point. We're choosing, um, and Betty, I'll stop in a second because I feel
Oh,
like
no, you go for it.
yeah, I feel like I'm on a roll a little bit with this, but it's like we're choosing to either continue to play into this old energy, which is connected to trauma of the divine feminine, ancestral trauma, trauma of the earth, like, or we are choosing to have a level of awareness in our day to day, and that ties back to the choices we make to from the heart center versus the mind, to make it simple. Um, when we make those choices, we are transmuting the collective energy as well. So the more of us who are choosing in that regard in our personal lives, in the day to day, are transmuting in the collective for not just women, but the balance of the divine feminine in the experience of humanity now. And that is a part of this shift into this other dimension. And that is really what is, I'm going to say, super necessary. So
Mission critical.
yeah, so it's mission critical. So, this healing was profound, but maybe not as much in a physical, visceral sense as in a sense of knowing, and it matched what I am, learning and what I'm humbly traversing in this lifetime. And so many of us are, right? Like I always like to say the details look very different, right? For everyone individually, we're having very different experiences coming from different places, but there are these themes and these energetics that are at play for all of us. So, in any case, it's right. There's the alchemy, there's that capacity. And then I think also when Betty and I were talking yesterday, some of the things what it felt like as it was coming up is, listen, no one, we are the ones we've been waiting for, in the sense that, like, no one is going to make the change except you, right? Like, if you want a different life experience, then that is directly related to the choices that you make. So sometimes we get stuck in victim energy, or sometimes we think it's not possible for a variety of reasons. And there is this piece coming from the feminine side that's more fiery, in the sense that, yes, we are the ones we've been waiting for. No one's rolling out a red carpet. No one is pressing a button and now there's a shift that makes it easier. We do need to contend with energies and a reality that is a result of thousands of years of certain things at play. It doesn't need to make it heavy in every moment of our experience, but really having this awareness that our choice is the shift, and also grace for ourselves. I think, we were talking about this off also. There's a lot of layers these days that make it challenging to not get distracted, to not feel overwhelmed, to not feel anxious, to not feel good physically in your body, and on and on and on. But all of these things still, from the moment, how far we go into them, the fear or the I'm not feeling well or the anxiousness, whatever it is, does relate to choices that we're making. So there's this balance, I think. And then Betty, I'll hand this off to you because you were touching on this as well. There's this balance of grace, uh, recognizing that there's not always a place of ease with choosing in this way. It's not always easy, right, to like be in integrity, to be authentic, to be in alignment, especially if you think you're going to upset one person or many people or threaten your career, or I mean, the list could go on and on. Maybe it could stir something up in your family, but at the same time, these choices, we always know when we drop into the heart center, we always know what the choice is. But again, sometimes if it's going to be difficult, we may not choose it. And right, there's grace for that. Like that, sometimes that's just going to be the reality. But also taking responsibility for how we are navigating our lives is part of that mission critical piece.
Well, when um, when you have an aspect of yourself like what you're talking about, this entity or this being that you develop a persona
Yes.
when you go through something to deal with that person or that situation or that relationship or that time in your life that protects you and goes out in
Yes.
front of you that you can use in different ways to navigate your life at that time. And when you no longer, when you grow and you expand and evolve, sometimes that aspect of you is still there. So it's like Jenny from the block, you can
Yes.
bring her out and kick ass if you need to, but
Exactly.
you don't need to have her out front.
Mm-hmm.
So that may leave you at some point or go into the background, but it was a necessary component
Yes.
of your life, while you were going through this time of growth or whatever. And um, when we have to have the dark, there's always the shadow self, and we can't be in the light all the time. There has to be darkness. There's no light without dark, no dark without light. The balance is always there. So we're bringing the shadows, we're bringing those aspects of ourself and our past forward. We just have to reconcile with how much of them we actually need to stay
Mm-hmm.
in our actual being. And I think that innately we know if something's true or not. I think that our intuition tells us if something is true, and we walk around like, scratching our head, going, I know that this isn't right. I know it isn't true. And yet I'm being told I should believe it. I'm hearing it over and over. I don't believe it. And then we're confused because we innately have the ability to see the truth. And if we look with our heart, we will see the truth and we'll see the love and we'll see the positive side of it. However, any source of power throughout our lifetime that wants to control us uses fear to
Yes.
do so. And they give you some half assed version of the truth, some partially lies.
So here, what's coming up as you're saying that is this feels important to acknowledge applied to the direction you're going and what I was just mentioning in healing work. You cannot transmute the thing from a place of resistance is the main word I would use, but fear is obviously connected to that. So I will just say this, this piece that it was like I was ready to transmute it, let it go. It's no longer overall a match to the place that I'm in, right?
Mhm.
It's like you can't come at the energy from this place of resistance or fear. It might take some time, but getting into the heart-centered place to actually carry out the alchemy is
Right.
key. So when you can see it, as you're saying, in the way that it served you and protected you, and that it's actually made up even of compassionate and loving energies. And sure, maybe this is just my example. I mean, there could be other energies in there as well. Um, but getting to a place where you really feel the truth of that, that is the key. So
When
yes,
like I said, when you know in your gut, you have to trust your gut. You know
yes,
intuitively that it's not right or it's not true, but the trauma that we have been put through as humans, male and female, from the beginning of time, it's just so evident, that we are traumatized by that. And then you have any like agency or control group, like we've talked about. I've always on a high horse about this, about organizations and the media and the corporations and the things that we buy into. We don't have to buy soap if we don't want to
right,
go with Procter and Gamble. We can
right.
another company or whatever. So there are choices all the way along not to buy into that. But this fear and this control that we have been traumatized and beaten up for so many years and punished keeps us to some degree intimidated to move through and speak out, to go to say, this doesn't seem right. This is not
Yes.
true. The anybody who wants to evolve and wants to bring their consciousness into this new world or this new existence is going to have a little bit of bravery. They're going to have to take some chances, and they're going to have to alchemize what they can, bring some of the darkness with them. Going, and we talked about the dimensions and going into the fourth dimension. It's not necessarily that the fourth dimension isn't a dimension of love like the fifth. The fourth dimension is where it's like the room where you put all the furniture you don't know what to do with. It's like there's a bunch of stuff in there, you'll deal with it later. It's chaos, it's just a mess, and it's flying around. And there's still a loving elevation to that dimension, but it's where we reconcile these kinds of things that you're talking about. The darkness that's there that we don't need
Yes.
anymore, with the shadow, the person, the entity, whatever the experiences or whatever, you have to just let it go. What we can't transmute, the higher beings of light and love will do.
Yes.
So when you get to a place where you can let go of that and you don't open the door to that room, that stuff just goes away.
Hmm.
The fear of standing up for ourselves, when we get to the fifth dimension, yes, it's the age of Aquarius and it's the consciousness of light and love, but it's rebellion. It's like we are going to go forward like Jedis, like warriors. We're going to change everything, like my generation wanted to do in the 60s. It was like everything is about love and peace, and we want to change that. We want the world to exist in that vibration. So when we get into this, and I have a candle right now I bought the other day, it's Aquarius, it's got the star system on it. I'm burning that right now. And I feel that rebellion inside. I can feel it deep in my belly. Like this is where you're going to get to say how you feel and mean it, and
Yeah.
not have to listen to the dogma and not have to listen to the training and the conforming and the necessary conforming, like we talked about on that. We touched on that. You don't have to conform. You can be courageous. You can be fearless. And when we get to that, that's when the change really starts to happen, when we can change the things that were broken down now that are falling apart into something better.
And I think, what does it look like when we do that? Because right now, and I'm sure we've touched on this a little, but it's like, we're in a time where there's a lot of divisiveness politically and otherwise and all of that. And it's like, what does that look like without judgment and without divisiveness and coming from a place of love? It's like a spiritual warrior. It's this, there's a power there. But if we were to think of it in terms of imagery or symbolism, okay, we're shifting our frequencies. We have a higher vibration as we're coming from the heart center. So it's almost like you're this beam or this ball of fire. And it's like it's love and light, but also anything that's a lower vibration or anything that's in even some
Up
of these, yeah, institutions, exactly. It just hits that frequency and it burns up.
vaporizes.
It
Yeah.
vaporizes, it transmutes right away. So
Yeah.
this is this there's a space and an opportunity there. And I think we've seen it too historically with different leaders and examples. I'm thinking of Mother Teresa. There's a lot of good examples.
Mhm.
But where there's a way to be in the power that is a revolution. And it is, if it's a rebellion or a revolution or, it is moving the needle, it's creating the change, it's moving the energy. Um, and and there is a space of if something is wrong, you can say it's wrong, like especially from like this like a humanitarian standpoint, right? But there's this space to come from in the heart where you're coming with a truth that when you don't have that edge of judgment or ego or I know better than you or on and on and on, it lands differently. And that's also the alchemy. That's also an example of the alchemy and the transmuting because what shifts, the changes as a result of that energy are very different than the changes as a result of when you're against something that's against you, for example.
Well, you create resistance when you resist.
Yes.
And so you, like Mother Teresa said, if I'm not coming to your war rally when you have a peace rally, then
Yes.
I'll come to that. It's
Yes.
what are we afraid of? We're divine. We're part of creator. We're part of source, the original consciousness, and we're immortal. So what are we really afraid of? Death is nothing but a birth into another existence. And
Right.
that's why when you threaten someone with their life, you say, why should I be afraid of you? I don't care. If I die, I'll come back again. I'll do something else. But to have all of these tools and to have all of this energy and all of this wisdom that we've accumulated, if we just go inside, and I tell people all the time, I'm redundant, the way out is in. Look inside. What is out of alignment with you? What can you do inside yourself to change this? It mostly it's designing a response rather than a reaction to something, or maybe just not reacting or responding at all. Just let it go, let it work itself out, you know,
Yes.
and just let it go, but not to be afraid. And then when you get back to a midpoint, start creating, use co-creation with the source consciousness. And when you get away from the fear, this is just the fear that we brought forward from like 40,000 years ago when we had to be protective of our existence, our life. We had to be afraid of the things that were threatening our life. In everyday life now in the modern world, that is not a threat. It's different than the saber-toothed tiger outside the cave, which is a reference a lot of people use. That was
Right.
real fear, and our bodies reacted with chemicals as soon as we feel it's tangible. When you're that much afraid, you can taste it. So we don't have to live like that now, but we still have that trauma in us. So
Yes.
when you let go of all of the darkness and you say, It's still there, I'm still addressing that was my reality at that time. But in this time, we have to bring the things that were hidden from us, the things that were taken away from us when the divine feminine was destroyed. It was just completely annihilated from all the stories, and the patriarchal march began. And it came from, there were men, the male was in the church, there were kings, there were popes. The king didn't do anything without the pope's approval. There were priests,
Emperors,
yes,
pharaohs.
yeah, and there were not feminine acknowledged, not to say that they were not there. They were
Right.
there, but they were not brought forth in the story.
Right.
They were not told um, like children hear stories or history. It's all about the male energy, and the feminine was completely villainized. So when you believe that, when you're little, you think princesses get everything, and the princesses in the palace and whatever. It's like, what about the queens? What about the high priestesses in Egypt? What all of the great
I'm
history
thinking of,
books and everything, they don't emphasize the female. The
right.
power was still there. Isis is one of the greatest healers of all time, right? And how much do you hear about that? It's not emphasized for a reason. They did not
That,
want women to know how powerful
yes.
they were.
And that's important, I think, to acknowledge in this moment also, because again, you mentioned bravery, and it's bravery and it's
Courage.
courage,
Yeah.
but also history wise, yeah, we don't have these examples, but just like there can be this, like I said before, ancestral trauma as an example, this sort of trauma we experience present day that goes way back past lives and historically and otherwise. The opposite is also true. The women who were powerful, and who made an impact and who brought the divine feminine into things and brought it forward and continued to carry it through to this day, that energy is also in the past history in the frequencies, but it's just, yeah, it's not in a history that we can easily access or read. You can research and try to find the things, but yeah, over time, it's like women have been written out. Actually, I recently read a book that was historical fiction about a midwife, and part of that was she did really exist, and her husband taught her to write at a time when, even the midwives wouldn't have, even women who had a different role than the conventional role wouldn't have typically known how to write. But because of this, she had a journal or a day book that shows all of this impact that she had. And certainly she wasn't writing it for that reason, but it's like this tiny historical remnant of this woman who likely just had her, life and presence had such a ripple effect for that time period. So I think it's important to remember and acknowledge that energetically, even if we don't always have the examples. And sometimes we do. I was thinking of like Queen Elizabeth when you were talking also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that during that time period, like all of the details of, it wasn't all good, but she certainly set an example, not getting married, with a lot of decisions that she made. I mean, on a grand scale.
Yeah.
But again, we hear about that now more because there's been movies and there's an interest that, wasn't always there. But yeah,
Well,
it's
a lot of women dress like men. A lot of women went to battle on a horse in armor,
yes,
and they were never seen as a woman, but they fought along with men. And there
right.
were people who pretended to be male in order to accomplish something.
Yes.
And isn't that pathetic?
Right.
When
Right.
you think that you can't go out as a woman and advertise or announce that you're a woman, and yet men, like in the James Brown song, it's a man's world, but it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or a girl, right? It's like they all come back to the castle to the women. They all come back. The Vikings come back on the ships to the women on the shore. They're all coming back. And that's where the men get their strength, is from the love of a woman, from the
Yes.
nurturing but they're placed in a position where they're supposed to wait and be there and be strong. But this power that women have must be phenomenal. It must be phenomenal if
Right.
they're that afraid of it that it's been suppressed.
Yes.
Even in my generation, when I worked alongside men who did half a job that I did, I had to do twice as much and work harder to make the same or less money to prove that I could do the job as a woman, which there's no rhyme or reason to the physical part of the job, a sales job, but I was humiliated and played pranks on and just treated like dirt, and it didn't keep me from doing my job. I
Right.
outsold most of the men. When I went to be a store detective, I wanted to, arrest shoplifters and keep them from stealing from the store, and these men were so threatened by my prowess. And being psychic, it was very easy to see the people that were in fear that were going to steal. And so I would have 9 or 10 arrests, and these guys had none. So they tried things to make me look bad. I
Right.
still did my job. I still chased criminals out the store. I wasn't afraid. I was like, I can do this job. It's a job, but they were so threatened by me outdoing them and out with my numbers being higher than theirs, that they were arresting little children that were reaching in the candy counter and getting a handful of candy or playing the games with the quarters and unplugging the machine so they could get a free game. Those are the people they were taking in the back.
Ah,
And I
yes.
was just like, I'm out here risking my life in the parking lot with some criminal who has a gun, and these guys are arresting children.
It's a really interesting example of the power of the divine feminine. I mean, you specifically were born with some very dialed in psychic gifts, but generally speaking, women are more intuitive than men. And, different jobs call for different skills, but that's an example where that intuition, I don't know, I would say that that position in general would be better suited to a woman most of the time. Not to say a man can't be intuitive or, that there can't be a balance there, but generally speaking, that's
But
going to
even
be true.
even in the sales job, I was young and attractive, and people, the guys were saying, "Oh, well, I could sell anything if I had, boobs, if I just went, in the store with a short skirt." And I said, "I'll dress just like you do, and I'll still outsell you."
Yeah,
And I would go, why I got more figures and more sales? Because I showed them how to make money. I
right.
said, if you buy this many at this price, you make this much. I didn't go, oh, and flirt and, wear my short skirts. And I showed them the business end of it, and I didn't waste their time.
Yeah,
They don't care what something smells like. I sold air freshener. They don't care. They just want to make money. So if you buy a
yeah,
carload of these, you'll make $3,000 sold.
right.
Got to
This
the
is another
ladder.
example. Yeah, I mean, there's bravery in your example of, the way that you're saying it, even like, hey, I didn't care. I still did my job. I was not, afraid to do this. And you could see how many were, I'm gonna say, had some fear around you and your process and your
Oh, they
success.
wanted to take me off the map. They would
Oh,
find me in the stores and come up and go, "Oh, you're the one who's kicking our behinds, huh?"
yeah.
And I would go, "Yeah, well, what do you got to show for it? You're out at the golf course or the pool at 1 o'clock. I'm still out here working." It's like you put in the time and you get the results.
I think what's important to acknowledge too is there has been some shift in a lot of workplaces, right? In like the laws and how women can be treated. And there has been a shift there. Um, that being said, this is still something that goes on where, women are undermined in the
Oh,
workplace.
there's still discrimination like
Yeah, there's still
crazy. Yeah.
discrimination and discriminate pay and on and on. So, but the degree to which it's shifted is a direct result of women like yourself who, move the needle forward and were not afraid to still do the thing. Because some just wouldn't be able to do that, which, hey, there's many reasons. So it's not even about judging whatever anyone is or isn't able to do in their circumstance, but um that feels like, so over historically and over time, it's like, yeah, when you think of what impact we've had and changes we've made, and again, like I feel like for some reason I'm getting the imagery of a pelvis and a bowl and, the circle and the shape of the earth. And it's like, this creative energy and capacity within us, we are holding the sort of expression of everything, not just creating it, but holding it as well. And so there's something significant about that in this time period, because going back to what you have mentioned a couple of times, the Dalai Lama saying the Western woman is going to change the world. We'll see. We'll see. But I get it. It's like,
Well, the
again,
artists and the scientists,
yeah,
because like when we talk about the left and the right brain, it has to be the creative side. We have to use the right brain. The female, the divine is in the right brain. The creativity is there. All of these things. We have, when we are born, we have a blueprint. It's already our consciousness for evolution and survival of our consciousness is already in us. We have a blueprint of that in our being. So we all we have to do is get in touch with that. And when you get into rational thinking and you get into the left brain, that's okay for putting groceries away and lining up your papers and, hanging clothes in the closet and organizing your kitchen and all that kind of stuff. But the right brain, the creative side of our being, is what is going to get us to recognize that blueprint of how our consciousness evolves. We have to co-create, we have to listen, we have everything that we need inside us. Oh, and
And
there's evidence of it. I mean, a lot of people are already doing it.
right.
You just
Um,
have to recognize that you have, like you said, there's nobody coming. We're who we're waiting for.
right.
If you listen to the indigenous, they have not changed what they say for thousands of years. They don't change with the trends or with the newest invention or the technology. The spirituality stays the same. The
Yes.
truth is always the same.
Yes. These core tenets, universal truths, it feels like, do remain the same. And I think also I'm coming back to that emphasis on the tools that we have, right? So those actually, the ones that are most impactful are also often rooted in cultures that have been doing the thing for thousands of years. So, what are those tools? It's Qigong and yoga and breath work. And, these are things that connect us with our spirituality, balance our
Energy,
energy,
energy.
ground us into the physical body. So it's great to do one of these things, to do a meditation and go way out into the ethers, or to go to the gym and get a really good workout. But the balance, and to make sure that we are paying attention to all the layers of our being and bringing those into balance, that feels really key, particularly right now as well. So again, it's just the acknowledgement of what is necessary in order to bring our medicine through, right? To, like, even just if we're in a good vibration and frequency, to share that with the world. I mean, maybe you're in a good one today and you're in a bad one tomorrow. And if it's a total roller coaster, then there isn't a consistency there where you can kind of like beam that light consistently. And again, this is just how it's coming. It's not even about judgment of that, but all of us know our own truth. So as we have the awareness of how to bring our own medicine through, which usually is connected to big impacts and changes in the world, even if it's showing up in a way that doesn't seem like it looks like that to you. Because everyone does have that capacity, and there is such a ripple effect for everything we do. Like, I'll share this to maybe clarify a little bit. So I had this energy healing, right? And I could viscerally feel so much better. I could feel a couple of days before, even if you took a photo of me, it
Hmm.
looked like I was like half in the bag or something, because this energy was like pulling so much. It was making me physically tired. But it's sort of like it was making me tired at a soul level. It was just like really locked in there. So with the release, and again, having that be at play to varying degrees for a long time, that felt amazing, like a world of difference, which I still feel that sitting right here. But I also before was more, again, maybe focusing on some physical things, like, oh, okay, my energy is being impacted because of fluctuation of hormones, and because of maybe things I've eaten that I wasn't aware of, everything that was in the food, or, so these are some of the things that I was paying attention to. Well, now with that resolution of the energetic piece, there is more clarity and awareness of the physical things to still be supported. So I have more energy. I have more energy reserve. But there's a light has been shined on the sort of adjustments or the tweaking that are necessary. I could be like, oh, I have more energy. And then I'll just sort of disregard, some of these tools that I have, or feel like it's not so serious, what I'm eating, or if I go to bed late, or some of these very simple things, right? But the truth is, once you know what works best for the vibration that you're operating at, that will allow you to do what you're here to do. And by saying do, it's also like just be, just take the do out. Like it will also look like doing things, but to allow you to be who you are, yeah, those things do need to be dialed in. Once you know the way to eat that's best for you, no one can tell you exactly what that is, but once you know the modes of exercise, and again, like the type of meditation, but yes, meditate every day, pay attention to these things every single day, because again, that's the cumulative impact. And when we don't, then that's when the fear is more likely to come in, because there's more that's creating static. And we've talked about this in our experience related to news and social media and the food and the environment and all the things.
Well, a lot of time I see it over and over again because I've been on the planet a long time. Um, Human beings tend to want to make everything difficult. Life is
by
not
by
difficult.
way of thinking they're making it easier, right?
Well, sometimes, yeah, they're complicating it. And
Yeah.
like you give them a test and you sit down, at the desk and there's three questions and they will go like this, look at it and they'll go, and they'll look up at the person who's handling the test and they'll be like, there must be something wrong. There's only three questions. Right away they think there should be more. Or if they read the question and it seems very simple, they think, well, this can't be right. This has to be harder. This needs to be more complicated. This needs to be longer. Why do we have this drive to make everything more complicated? It's so simple. The things that really work are usually very simple. I see there's a thing on the internet right now. This little tiny boy, he's like under two, two little boys, a black little boy and a white little boy. And the little white boy is kind of crying, and the little black boy says, "You okay?" And he puts his head down. He goes, "Need a hug?" And he hugs him. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Somebody doesn't need to talk. They don't need to hear you talk. They don't need for you to try to figure out their problems. They just need the warmth and the energy of another person's love, another human being to show them that they care, as simple as a hug. And children know that. If you act like you're hurt, you lay down on the floor and oh, I hurt your 2-year old will run over and kiss your forehead. They know innately that love heals and that
Yes.
good thoughts and good energy. And it's as simple as that. If you turn that around, and like I do that thing that you gave me a jar with papers
Yes.
and you lay down on the bed and you put your arms out like this, like a T, and you lay down. It says, close your eyes and smile and imagine that all your cells are smiling too. Every single one of your cells has knowledge in it. Your body knows what to do. The simpler, the better. You talk to your cells, you tell them what you want, they know what to do. You don't have to know what to do, you just ask. So the simpler that this is, the more understanding that people have of looking inside themselves for the answers rather than always looking outside for a cure, for medicine, for a doctor, for a new place, for a different this or a different that. Sometimes just staying the course, and there's signs that appear. There's going to be things that symbols have been around for millions of years. The symbols have a meaning. So you look for the signs and you look for serendipity and synchronicity and things that come on your path, and you either integrate them or you pass them by. But it's so simple. The less that you look outside for complex, complicated, difficult answers, it's the better, and that's why when you look at cave art, what are they saying? They want to know what they're saying. They're saying, this is a buffalo. This is a picture of a buffalo. And there's some of those outside here. They don't have to be saying anything.
Right.
It's just a symbol. And so more when you go back and all the symbols have meaning, everything that anyone left behind for us has some kind of meaning. So you can just be simple and say, what is this supposed to mean to me?
Yes.
If it
Right.
doesn't,
If you're blocked or confused,
yeah.
you can ask your body, you can ask your higher self, just taking that space and that quiet moment
Or
for
pass
the
it by.
clarity.
Just pass it by. If it doesn't have a meaning to you or it isn't
Yes.
supposed to be part of your experience, you pass it by. But we make everything so complicated. And a lot of times, even if you don't talk to somebody, I always just say, people have complex problems in readings and they want me to, what should I do? What should I say? Should I say something? Should I not say something? And I say, wish them well.
Yes.
Send loving energy toward that being. It doesn't take any energy from you, it doesn't take any time. Just wish them well. And then whatever they do with that energy doesn't concern you. It shouldn't be a part of your checking the outcome and being attached to what they do. But they want to make it complicated and have time frames around it and what should I say and who should I say it to and whatever. And I just say, send them loving energy, wish them well on their journey. And
Well,
it
yeah. And I
doesn't
think
involve you.
what's coming up in this example too is like if you're in your mind about the what should I do, and sometimes it can be related to some sort of pattern. Like oftentimes, if you're overcomplicating something, there is some pattern there that you have. And so, in the interest of keeping it simple, asking what the pattern is, it doesn't really matter. Like, we don't need to know the whole story or go into a whole thing about it, but just having a sense of that and then setting the intention to completion, like to complete the cycle, to shift the pattern, to come back to the alchemy, right? There's a real opportunity with that so that the next time around, in terms of symbols, it's just like coming as a spiral. It's like you're in a different place in the spiral. Like you will come back to a similar thing. And do you make the same choice again, or do you get confused again? Or are you now in a new place because you've shifted the energy where, yeah, you can just I mean, the scenario you were using was like a little different than I guess the direction I'm taking. Like sometimes, yeah, it's just you let it go or you mind your business.
Well, the
Uh,
person who's in front of me, they're asking me how, they should behave or how what they can do. It isn't really about them.
right.
It's about
Certainly,
the
yes.
person that they're talking about, and that is their issue. So you just have to say, this isn't my thing to solve. This isn't my
Yeah.
job. I just have to send them loving energy and wish them well. And don't bother them. Don't go further. Just leave it. And so
Yeah.
many people constantly want to make everything so difficult. I live with it every
Ooh.
day.
So a part of that feels kind of, I guess, exciting to like the healer side of me, right? Is like there can be such a codependency, where, right, it's like, okay, you want to help the person, you want to solve it, you want to offer up some advice, you might have an idea of what you can do for them that will then help them shift the thing on and on and on. But what you're saying here and what's really like resonating deeply for me is like there's a place of like we need to honor everyone's journey and respect the journey and the path that they're on. So it's not about us finding a solution. It's more like what you were saying with the children and the one offering the other a hug in the moment. Listen, offer love, send them love, like you're saying, and that's it. when something is truly yours, then it goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Like there can be some alchemy, some change that is necessary for you to make based on your process. But yeah, in the case of anyone else's thing and what they're saying and doing, even if it's in relation to you and your actions, that has nothing to do with you. I know you're saying that, but I feel like, yeah, this is a really important piece here. Just allowing them to
And
be
you
on their
say
path. And they can
people will,
solve it or not solve it, right? What if they don't, quote, solve it in the way that you think should be for them? It's like that's their journey. We're not,
they have to figure it out,
yes,
and sometimes you're taking away the opportunity for that lesson,
yes,
by trying to make it easier or whatever. But it's like the simplest thing. And again, I go to lyrics of songs, and John Lennon said it, you know, let it be, let it be.
yes,
There will be an answer. Let it be, let it be.
yeah,
Just let it be. And that person will eventually, maybe they'll come back to you someday and tell you what happened, or maybe not. But it, we need to be in here. We need to be focused on the things we can change, the things that we can't change. We have to let the universe take care of it. We can only change what we have an impact on it. Like the Dalai Lama said, the Western woman and the artists and the scientists are going to save this planet. And the art of science and the science of art. It still goes back to the right brain. It still goes back to the integration of the two sides of the brain. And there's, anatomically and physiologically, there's such a huge difference in the two hemispheres of the brain. And it's beyond spiritual. It goes into the physical, body of how they're designed. But a lot of this is it's about being overeducated. People look too much outside for answers. They're doing research and they're hearing opinions and
mm,
you're listening to so many different versions of everything. Sometimes it's just not something that we can figure out. It's not something we have an
yes.
answer for.
And also, when you say look outside for answers, a part of me from a spiritual context is feeling that recognition of there's nothing outside of us.
Yeah,
So
right. We are
that,
God and we are
yeah.
part, the universe is in us and we are in the universe and
And
we
the
are
answers
divine.
right. Coming in the, like you were saying, the symbols, like it doesn't have to be language, it can be a feeling. But when you recognize that, nothing is outside of us,
Right.
then you start to recognize more that web and that connection of life and how everything is working with you and communicating with you. And that's when you're more clued into those symbols and signs from nature and Mother Earth and from spirit and your guides and the
How about
unseen.
just enjoying it and
Yeah,
just experiencing it and knowing
right.
it, experiencing it? The experiential thing is go out and you don't have to know why the tree is there or who planted the tree or how long it took to grow. You can just go and sit there and enjoy the tree. And we have to know the history of it. We don't have to know everything. We just have to let it evolve around us and enjoy it and experience it. There's so many things that are like that. And humans always have to label everything and they have to measure everything and they have to have a name for it. And like I said, art and science, you can look at something and know that there's a science behind it. You can look at the art and you can know that the painter was inspired in some way, but you're not going to know how. You just enjoy it.
Right.
If something is delicious, you don't have to know the scientific background of it. You just enjoy it, just partake. We need to enjoy this planet.
And
And
this is, we're spirit embodied. I mean, we're in the
right,
physical body.
right,
So
right.
enjoying those sensory experiences, which to my understanding from communication with spirit and guides, et cetera, is one of the very unique aspects to being
In a
human
body.
in this body on the earth. I'm thinking of this. There's this Qigong exercise where you like raise your arms up with your palms towards the sky till you reach the top of your head, and that's rising sun. and then
Hmm.
the palms face down and like this is falling rain.
Right.
And the inhale is the rising sun, and the exhale is the falling rain. And
Right.
yes, this is something that'll calm you down and regulate your nervous system. But anything like that, we're bringing in this level of body awareness to the moment that then, like maybe you just do that a couple of times and then whatever you're going to do, you're going to go sit by the tree or have a good meal or but these subtle little things really anchor us in the body so that we don't just feel like we're like heads running around, or there's so many ways we can feel disembodied. And it's like, yeah, that's a huge part of it, enjoying the physical experience.
This is like a lottery, when you want to incarnate, winning a ticket to come into a body. It's an experience that you don't just want to throw away. You want to
Yes.
enjoy the parts of it that you can and not worry too much about, like we talk about, having concern for things and bringing awareness. But there are people who devote their entire life and they're studying and they're learning and they're experimenting and they're trying to fix the things that are out of alignment. They're aware of a lot of changes and stuff, but there's still so much to just enjoy. And we're on this ride with Gaia. The Earth is on this wild Mr. Toad ride at Disneyland. It's like this wild ride where you have to hold on, and it's like I tell people, I've said it several times even this week, we are the fleas on the dog. We are on this planet, and this dog is jumping and barking and moving, and we got to hold on.
Yes.
We are going to stay on the dog. We're the fleas on the dog. So we're on Gaia and we are going to go for this ride. So what we take to the next level has to be clean and pure. And we still take the shadow, we still take the part of us that we need to bring with us to balance us. But we don't want to take all this nonsense and all the trivia and all the BS, with us. It would be like putting on a dress for the red carpet and not showering.
Yeah.
Like, would you really go put one of those evening gowns on without showering and putting makeup on? And, it's like we want to go to the next place clean.
Yes.
We want to be pure and clean and bring our best A game to
Yeah,
the
highest vibration, highest frequency. So I would encourage anyone listening to think about completion. And certainly, if you have questions or comments, we always love to hear them. But that's a theme, as I understand it, this whole year. So, what things are coming to completion for you, or where's there an opportunity for that? Something that you just want or need to end. And then also, the alchemy, how you've experienced it in your life or what you might be interested in about that. Definitely reach out to either one of us. It's a topic that I love, and I've seen some pretty miraculous and even wild things related to it over the course of mostly my adult life, but I feel my whole life. And then, yeah, we are the ones. So we took our shower. We're in the gown. The red carpet is there. We rolled it out ourselves.
right. You take your own red carpet. And, there's it's a tragedy that this happened for so many years, that somebody was able to pull the wool over our eyes and deceive us to this degree. And it's like we don't have to get angry. We just have to do well and get even.
Yeah.
So don't get angry, get even. Take your best shot at this next dimension. Do the best work you can do, and it's all you can ask of yourself, really. You don't have to understand everything about it, but be a part of the change, like what they say, if you want to
Yes.
be part of the change that you want to see in the world, and do the best you can with the understanding that you have, and just leave behind the things you don't need that don't serve you. It's like carrying around, a bunch of luggage behind you, like a shopping cart full of stuff. You're free. You don't have to take all of that with you. to the next place.
I love
So,
that.
yeah, and I think the completion piece that you mentioned at the outset, it's completed to the best of your ability, you know,
Yeah.
to what you know about something
Yes.
when it feels complete, for you. It doesn't have to, you don't have to have validation of it. Just do the best job you can in completing whatever it is that you're leaving behind. Because when we go into this, like I said, it's the age of Aquarius, and there's going to be some rip roaring, rowdy, rebellious uprisings to get
Yeah.
this thing off the ground. And that's a place I want to be. That's
Right.
my kind of
Well,
party.
and I would agree with you. And what I would say to that is like, yeah, if you get angry, feel some anger, feel the emotion. The emotion is not you, it's just something you're experiencing. Allow it to move through you, but
Right,
also allow it to be determination. We
yeah,
don't have to be angry, we can be determined.
right, that's right.
There's a shift that feels great.
Yeah, that's the alchemy right there.
Yes, yes,
Change it into something positive, turn it around.
yes.
Like the old cliche, when you get lemons, make some lemonade.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think that's a beautiful thing to end on. Thank you all for tuning in with us. And
we appreciate it. Whoever we touch, we hope that you share it with everyone that you love and people, even strangers that you don't know. It never hurts to give out information, and
yes,
sometimes people are looking for their way. And if you can point or show them the direction or give them some clarity, it helps. And please mention our podcast because there's those that are not aware of it. If you share it, we would appreciate that.
yes.
So may we meet
Betty's,
again,
yes.
sit in circle, tending our hearts, cultivating our shared love and joy, supporting the ascension of our beautiful planet. Until then, our light to yours.
Aho. Thank you, Betty, and thank you, everyone. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Pavan. Aho.